Nick Saban retiring just turned into a former five-star corner committing to Texas A&M.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, last night, in the middle of the Aggies basketball game, we got some bombshell news as Texas A&M found out that former five-star corner Dezz Ricks was going to be transferring to Texas A&M. So, Dezz Ricks was part of the 2023 class and played his freshman year at Alabama. Of course, news comes out that Coach Saban is going to call it a career, and a great one at that. So Dezz Ricks hits the portal, and pretty quickly, he's over at Texas A&M, and he's committed. Looking at Dezz Ricks as a player, so he was a composite five-star. 24/7 Sports had him as like the 36th player in the class, but he was a composite five-star, so he's five-star. Call him a five-star. And he was a part originally of the 2024 class, but reclassified to 2023, which I always like that because that means, he's still a young guy. He should have been a freshman this year or heading into this season. So, he's a young guy and he got that extra year of college football experience. He appeared in 2 games for the Alabama Crimson Tide last season. Now, of course, that was only 9 snaps, so we're not going to put much into those 2 appearances. But, I look at this. This is the way I look at it. Okay. Pretty simple. If you have a corner, a former, he could have been a freshman in this year's class, right? Instead, he went to Alabama, practiced with the best of the best, was coached by Nick Saban, was coached by some pretty good coaches, saw what winning looks like and a good program looks like. And now Coach Saban retires. He transfers to Texas A&M. The way I look at that is, that's a great thing. Would you rather have a guy who just played another year of high school or was just in college for a year and now is transferring over to Texas A&M after a year in Nick Saban's program? I think that's a great thing. I think this guy now, I think that saying he's going to walk in and be an immediate starter day one. He only played 9 snaps last year. Now, I'm not saying that's a problem. I'm not saying, why do you only play 9 snaps? He's a true freshman. I am not saying that I'm concerned about the fact that he didn't play a lot last year. What I am saying is not a ton of experience. So if Dezz Ricks came in and started next season, I wouldn't be surprised in the least bit. Not one bit would I be surprised, genuinely. But on the flip side of that, if the coaching staff, gave him a little time to develop, and here's the deal. You're going to see him on the field this year. You're going to see him on the field, but will he be an every down, every snap type of corner? I don't know if I'm convinced about that, but this to me is my favorite type of portal addition. Dezz Ricks is the perfect portal addition. And the reason he's the perfect portal addition is because he comes in with a ton of eligibility left. You got a former 5-star player that's coming into your program with a ton of eligibility left. You can develop them. You can start them this year. You can have them sit behind some players and develop and start them next year and get 2 or 3 years out of him as a starter. That is what you have in a player like Dezz Ricks. And that is why he is the perfect addition. I think that this is the type of a guy. I know that at Texas A&M we're a little bit oh, well, what do 5 stars really mean after kind of what Jimbo did, with some of the talent that we've had over the years. But I'm telling you, at the end of the day, not every coaching staff is going to mismanage talent like Coach Fisher did. Coach Elko is going to get the most out of this type of player. I'm telling you. I think Dezz Ricks is going to turn into a star. Reading up on him, watching high school tape on him, I get really excited. Words that I've seen used to describe Dezz Ricks playing the position: tall, fast, explosive, physical. Those are all words you want to hear associated with the corner position. I've heard he can play the slot. He can play outside. I like a versatile corner that can really do it all. But, at the end of the day, I look at this and I go, okay, 6'1", 180-pound corner, started his career at Alabama, former 5-star guy, and I just get really excited. I think he could be a star. I do. Now, as I said, is it going to be this year? Well, let me know that in the comments. That's what I want to hear y'all's thoughts. Dezz Ricks, do we see him out there starting this season? I'm only a little hesitant because I just think he's a young guy. Now, here's the deal. Would he have started at Alabama? Maybe not. I know they're going to be losing some corners to the draft, but I think he'd have had a shot to start this year at Bama. So you got to look at it like that. It's like, well, maybe he didn't play a ton this year because he was a freshman. Maybe he would have played next year. So I could be putting a little bit too much stock into maybe he needs to develop more. He could come in and be a starter, but you know what I mean? That's one of those things that we don't know right now. We're going to kind of find out when he gets on campus and we get to practice and we get to the spring game and we get to all this and we learn more about Dezz Ricks and who he is as a player and hear more of the, spring practice hype and all that coming out, summer hype. And I think you can see that develop around Dezz Ricks. I think that getting here early, early in the portal window gives him time to get accustomed to this coaching staff, the new plays, what this defense is going to look like. But this is a huge get, ladies and gentlemen. I always say, don't let anyone talk you out of being excited about this one. Seriously, do not let anyone talk you out of being excited about this one. Dezz Ricks was a 94 overall as a portal player. You know who else was a 94? Nick Saban. So you see the caliber of player that Dezz Ricks is. With the portal players that Texas A&M currently has in the secondary, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the great job Mike Elko has done in segment 3, but just for half a second, I want to say, I love somebody who can look at a problem and find a solution. Okay. Coach Elko was at the bowl game. I'm sure watched tape on the entire season and some of these players. And you know what he said to himself? These corners aren't it. This corner room, this secondary is not it. We're not going to succeed like this. So what does he do? Okay. He goes and he fixes the problem. That is how you handle life. You got a problem? You fix it. There's a problem with the secondary. Coach Elko fixed it with a ton of talent. Now you got Will Lee. You got Saunders. You got the Florida kid whose name I'm forgetting now. Let me get the Florida kid's name. Jaden Hill, the Florida corner. You got Donovan Saunders from Cal Poly. You got Will the Blanket Lee. This corner room is stacked with transfer talent. Jaden Hill is an 89 overall player in the portal. Saunders a 90. Will Lee is a 90. And then you bring in Dezz Ricks, who's a 94. Seriously, ladies and gentlemen, I feel so much better about the secondary, and not just the corner. They've added a ton of talent to the safety room as well. We've talked recently about some safety additions, and then you add on top of that, these players. I think that Ratcliffe's going to be a great player. I think that this safety room, I think Ricky Wright's a good player, Trey Jones. They have solved the problem with portal additions. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dezz Ricks, I wouldn't. What's funny? It's like the more I talk myself into it, it's like I do think you're going to see him a lot on the field this year. I've changed my opinion a little bit. I do think you're going to see a lot of Dezz Ricks this season. He's just, the high school tape's too good, and he had a year to develop under Nick Saban. I think there's a high likelihood he would have started at Bama because they lost some players. I think you're going to see this guy out there, And I think Dezz Ricks is going to be a lockdown corner in the SEC, and I cannot wait to see that play out. But this is a big one, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, this is just narrowing the gap and when it comes to portal rankings, and this is why Texas A&M has one of the best transfer portal classes in all college football. But there's a chance you bring in another player like this, you could have the number one overall recruiting class. I mean, a transfer portal class. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a massive get. Let me know how y'all are feeling about landing Dezz Ricks in the YouTube comments. Talking a little bit about young guys playing, talking about Dezz Ricks. We're going to talk about, could any 2024 freshmen see the field this season? We'll have that conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that will take my business to the next level? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. I love LinkedIn Jobs. I talk about it all the time. I love how they put together people looking for a job and people who are looking to hire for their small business or large business. That's what I love about LinkedIn. It makes it so easy. The back and forth is so easy when you're using LinkedIn Jobs. Whatever you're doing, if you're looking for employees, if you're looking for a job, LinkedIn Jobs is the place to be for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So I want to talk a little bit about who could we see on the field as a true freshman this year. So let's go through this. So I'll give you an example of a player. Some of your highly ranked players, like Blake Ivy, the offensive tackle, for example. I don't think you see him this year. And the reason being is I think he's got a ways to go when it comes to developing his body to be college football ready. He's not a guy, he's still listed at 6'3.5", 280. I mean, that is not offensive tackle ready in the SEC. He could have, gotten a little bigger since then, but I haven't seen an update on his. We'll see that when he gets to campus. But, he's got to get in the weight room, get to Eaton. We got to get him up to, 305, 310 before we can get into the conversation of him playing tackle in the SEC. But, he's got the intangibles and the talent. He's going to be a great player. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see Solomon Williams or Dealyn Evans on the field a little bit. They are some of the, best players in this class, the defensive lineman and edge rusher, and Williams and Evans. I think Evans is an absolute monster, incredible athlete. I would not at all be surprised to see him on the field this season for the Aggies. The offensive lineman I have here is Isendre Ahfua. I think that he just did really well in one of the All-American games. I saw a ton of tape of him. I mean, I think this guy is SEC ready right now. And I don't say that about offensive linemen often. As y'all know, y'all who have been with me from the start, I am not high on offensive linemen playing early on into their career. But there is something about Isendre Ahfua. I really do think he could come in and play in the SEC right now. That's how good I think he is. I think his body's ready to do it. Now, he's an interior guy, and I think Texas A&M's fine when it comes to interior offensive linemen. I think they were before the portal, and then they added a couple interior linemen. So will Ahfua get on the field as a freshman? I don't think so, unless he really just shines, which I just have this feeling is possible. I do have this feeling that he could work his way, into that preseason hype, and could he get on the field? I'm not betting on it, but if an offensive lineman in this class was going to do it, in my opinion, it's Ahfua. I do think of the linemen committed currently in the class, I think he is the most SEC ready right now, college football ready right now. I love his technique. I love he's just mean. I mean, he is just mean on the football field, and I love that about Papa Ahfua. I wouldn't be surprised if Tristan Jernigan was this year's Turian York. I mean, I think Jernigan is a really good player. Now it's funny. Alabama made a late push. Of course, I assume, let's say he would have flipped Alabama. I think he might have come back to Texas A&M, but with the news that Saban retired. But people wanted this guy. Jernigan's a good player, and people wanted this guy, and the Aggies were able to hold on. I think he climbed in the rankings. To be fair, at one point he climbed in the rankings. He is not ranked as high on 24/7 Sports as he should be, or some other places, excuse me, as he should be. He's a really good football player. He's the player, I think, of all of these names that I look at it and I say, Tristan Jernigan is incredibly underrated in this recruiting class, and I think he's going to be a star, a little bit like York. So, Jernigan, I think that some of these portal additions might make it harder for him to find his way onto the field, but he's a good player, and I think he'll be on the field for sure early in his career. Maybe not as a true freshman, but early on in his career, no question. Then some of the guys, one guy who I really like is Ernest Campbell, and I'm going to tell you why. Ernest Campbell, the receiver, is not, to me, at least right now, a receiver you're going to use as like a possession receiver. You're not throwing slants to Ernest Campbell. What you're doing with him is gadget plays to get him with the football in space, whether it's a jet sweep or just a flat, maybe a go route or a bubble screen, whatever you're doing with Ernest Campbell, it's that you're not having him, run outs and run posts. And I mean, that's not, you're having him, you're saying, okay, run straight to the end zone and we're going to throw the football to you, or take 2 steps behind the line of scrimmage, we're going to throw the football to you. And I just think his speed is so undeniable, and his elusiveness and shiftiness. I wouldn't be surprised if they had some plays, gadget plays for him. Not like I said, I'm not saying he's going to be a starting receiver out there running slants on 3rd and 6. I'm saying he's going to be a potential possession receiver who, I'm sorry, you know what I mean? A potential gadget player who's going to get some plays for him, drawn up for him. So that's, if a receiver is going to make it on the field, I'd say it'd be him. And then, assuming you're able to hold on to Terry Bussey, it would not surprise me in the least bit to see Terry Bussey get on the field as a true freshman. That's just how good he is. Can you imagine a room where you got Dezz Ricks and Terry Bussey and Will the Blanket Lee? I mean, it's funny how I've gone from this secondary being a concern for me, like I am worried about this. This is a problem, to I am excited to see how this plays out. I really am excited to see how this secondary plays out and works itself out. I think it could be an incredibly, incredibly talented room if all goes to plan and all goes right. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really anxious to see how this secondary works itself out. But any other freshman, I don't think you're going to see Carner, the tight end, or Funk, the tackle, or Jordan Pride, the safety, or Miles Davis. I don't think you're going to see those guys just because of these portal additions. And I don't think you see Ahfua either. I'm just saying, if you can go, look for some tape. I can try and link it in the comments, but some of these videos of him at this All-American game, I mean, he just looks so good. He just looks so incredibly good, powerful, strong, quick for his frame. I think Isendre Ahfua is going to be a star offensive lineman. I think you're going to see him play in the NFL. So is he on the field as a freshman? I don't know if we can say that, but I think whenever he is on the field, he is going to be a star in college football. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I feel really good about this recruiting class. And, it's not the deepest recruiting class. You got 14 players signed, and then you've got, Terry Bussey still committed and waiting to make his decision. But I think the job you've done with the 23 transfers, add on top to that class, I think it really does. And that's what we're going to talk about here in a minute. I think it really does kind of cancel itself out with the players you lost. So I feel really good about where Texas A&M is. And that's what we're going to talk about. How has the portal the job that Coach Elko has done in the portal, how has that raised the ceiling for Texas A&M this upcoming season? We're going to have that conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. I talk about how fun FanDuel is all the time. It is the app I use when it comes to all of my sports betting. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet. I love using FanDuel. It's a ton of fun. It makes the NFL playoffs more fun. It is just all around exciting using the FanDuel app. It just makes watching a sporting event, baseball, basketball, football, whatever it is, it makes the viewing experience just a ton more enjoyable. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. I also want to tell you about our friends over at Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but can we talk just for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. That's scary. I can't imagine a loved one of mine, being sick, and these supply chain issues keep them from getting the life-saving medications they need. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. So, before we call it a day here at Locked On Aggies, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to talk a little bit about how I think the portal has raised the ceiling of this Texas A&M football team, and I really think it has. I mean, I think the greatest example of what I'm talking about is Nick Saban. And I mean, here's the deal. I had someone in the comments saying, like, Andrew, I'm not hating, but like, are you a little too high on Nick Saban and some of these players? I think some people are a little scared to get their hopes up and get excited. But hey, I get that. I do get that. But I just think a player like Nick Saban is going to come in and be a star. I really do. I mean, the tape doesn't lie to me. The numbers at the Power 5 level don't lie to me. This guy's going to be a star. And I think he is a great example of what this transfer portal class means. A player like Dezz Ricks, who we've talked about today, is a great example of what this transfer portal class means. What it means is, yeah, you lost a lot. You lost a lot to the portal. You lost an Evan Stewart, and you lost a Walter Nolan, and you lost a ton of talent. There's no question. There's no softening the blow of any of that information. Losing those players hurt. But you brought in a ton of talent to make up for it. So, I think that the only position, in my opinion, I'm going to say, and I've said this, I've kind of danced around this take. I've explained a little bit, but I'll tell you this, and this might get some hate. And if it does, bring it on, because it has to do with how high I am on Nick Saban. But frankly, I think we won the Nick Saban, Walter Nolan switcheroo. I do. I think Nick Saban's a better player. Was he ranked as high coming out of high school? No, of course, obviously not. But I really think that Nick Saban's going to have a better season for the Aggies this year than Walter Nolan will for Ole Miss. Now, I'm not wishing poor luck on Walter Nolan at all. I mean, I hope he does well at Ole Miss. He's going to be an NFL player. I just think Nick Saban's going to be a star. So I'd rather have Walter Nolan and Nick Saban. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather have both of them, but we don't. And I do think we won that trade. So that might be a hot take. And if it is, let me know in the comments. But I I really feel that way about Nick Scorton. So the only position I think that you haven't upgraded in the portal is the receiver room. And now listen, I think Jabri Barber is a great player. I'm not saying that him and the La Tech transfer, receiver, I'm not saying that they aren't good players and that they can't help. What I am more saying is that replacing Evan Stewart and Anais Smith is about impossible. Those two guys are star SEC players. Anais Smith, I think, is going on to a great career, hopefully, and Evan Stewart will be an NFL player down the road, I think. So that's a position. I mean, think about it. Safety, upgraded. I'm going to run through position by position. Safety and corner, we know you upgraded. Linebacker, you bring in a couple great linebackers. Defensive line, we know you either you can say you upgraded or you kind of stayed the same there, but stayed the same on that defensive line. Knowing who you already have coming back, I feel great about that room. Offensive line, you've upgraded. Running back room, I think that you didn't really lose anybody, but I think you upgraded in a player like E.J. Smith. And then quarterback, there weren't any additions made. So I think the only position that you could argue, I think we were better off before, is receiver. Tight end, I think you've upgraded as well. And I'm going to miss Jake Johnson a lot, but I will say, but here's my point. I think you didn't have Donovan Green last year, and I thought Donovan Green was going to be the guy over Jake Johnson. So it's not really, you can't say that you upgraded, because I don't think that the guys you brought in are an upgrade over Jake Johnson, but I do think that Donovan Green can be the same, if not better, compared to Jake Johnson. So I think that's fair too. But what I'm getting at here is I think this roster has gotten as a whole better. I really do. And maybe not stars wise, but I'm in a spot right now, Texas A&M wise, where it's like, maybe we don't need stars. Maybe we don't need this. Maybe we need players who can just come in and play the right way. That seems like the kind of coach Mike Elko is to me. He seems like the kind of coach that's just gritty. I want to win football games. I don't need 5 stars. I need players who are going to come in here and put everything they got into this. So I just feel like the ceiling of this 2024 season has jumped a few, maybe even a full win, thanks to all of the incredible work Coach Elko has done in the transfer portal this year. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank you all so much for tuning in every single day. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It helps a ton. Hit the like button. That also helps a ton. I really do appreciate it. If you're listening on a podcast platform, leave a 5-star review on the show. That also helps. Really appreciate y'all being here. Hope everybody has a great rest of their Wednesday, and we will see you tomorrow.